Oh, that's nice.
Testing.
Did you have your mic this time?
It's a brand new one, too.
It's on push to talk. Yep, there you go. Should I do open again or not?
You ready? Go ahead. You need to read anything or no? You want to read anything or no, Mike?
Good evening, everyone. The 7:30 Open Public Meetings Act, the meeting is being conducted tonight. Mayor Bontempo?
Here.
Ms. Weber?
Here.
Mr. Gratelli is on his way, I know that. Mr. Lucarelli?
Here.
Mr. Santana?
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody could also please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our troops both home and abroad who work tirelessly to protect us each and every day. Thank you. Welcome to tonight's opening session. Only for the record, could you denote that Committeeman Gratelli is here? Just for the record, Committeeman Gratelli is here.
7:34, Mayor Gratelli, Mr. Gratelli? Here?
I think I'm here. First order of business is approval of minutes. Have a motion.
No, there are no minutes on the agenda this evening.
You remove them? Okay. So tonight have a proclamation I'd like to present. So before we begin with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to make a special presentation. I am pleased to be able to welcome a hometown hero, golf star, Megha Gona, and her family for tonight's meeting. As most of you remember, Megha's story enthralled the nation just a few weeks ago when, as a 17-year-old amateur, Megha rose to first place in the U.S. Women's Open in San Francisco before ultimately tying for 14th place in the tournament. Megha's journey began right here in Holmdel. Participating in various sports throughout her childhood, Megha eventually decided that golf was her path she wanted to pursue undividedly. She connected with golf coach Katie Rudolph, recently named head coach of men's and women's golf herself at NYU, who helped Megha to hone her golf skills. Coach Rudolph clearly had no doubts about her player's ability, saying just a few weeks ago, "I've been calling Megha the best player in the world since she was 7. Megha matriculated to Holmdel High School, where she played on the golf team and participated in the U.S. amateur tournaments around the country. Following her senior year as a Hornet, Megha will head to Stanford University as part of the class of 2026 with outstanding reflection of your academic achievements. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the role Megha's family played in her story. From her mother, Sudha, who served as a role model, who made sure Megha got to her practices and games, their father, Harry, whose own love of golf helped introduce Megha to her game, to her sister, Serena, herself a golfer, whose support and friendly competition helped keep Megha on the top of her game. Thank you all for being with us here tonight. Now, on behalf of my colleagues in the Holmdel Township Committee and the family of Holmdel, I want to officially congratulate Megha Gona on her achievements and thank her for serving as a positive ambassador for our township. A resolution of the governing body that will declare today to meet Megha Gona Day, the Township of Holmdel, and I'm honored to present you with the key to the Holmdel Township. The proclamation that I have reads, whereas Mega Gona fell in love with the sport of golf when her father introduced her to the game, inspired her to begin a career in sports, and whereas Mega began competing in golf tournaments at the age of 12 and participated in the 2019 U.S. Women's Open at the age of 15, and whereas she has also qualified 4 times for the drive, chip, and putt national finals at Augusta National and reached the semifinals of the U.S. Women's Amateur in 2019, and was working with her dedicated coach, Katie Rudolph, Mega has made it again to the 2021 U.S. Women's Open held in the Olympic Club in San Francisco, and whereas Mega's hard work and dedication led her to place 14th overall in the tournament and moved up to number 30 in the World Amateur Golf Rankings at the age of 17, and therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Township Committee, the Township of Holmdel, this 13th day, July 2021, that congratulations be extended to Mega for outstanding achievement. Be further resolved that suitably engrossed copy of this resolution will be presented to her as a small token of esteem in which she is held. Be it further resolved that all best wishes be extended to Mega Gona for continued success in all her future competitions and endeavors. Congratulations, Mega. So one proclamation wasn't enough tonight. I have a second one. Assemblywoman, would you like to come up and... Yes, we would. So I have...
So you want to do your thing? You want to give her yourself?
Yes. So I did something a little unique tonight because, Mega. Yeah, you have to understand, I am a golfer at heart, although I was joking on the way in, if I break 100, it's a great day for me. For this day today, and then proclamation.
And I wouldn't know Birdie from another word, so there you go. Years ago, I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, Bayshore Hospital, I'm the chair there, and the person who was chairing the golf event quit, and they said to me, "You have to chair it now." I'm like, "What?" So I am absolutely in awe of you for many reasons, but that's the least of them. And so I have for you, on behalf of the Senate and the General Assembly, but specifically on behalf of Senator O'Scanlan, myself, and Assemblyman Schaufelberger, a joint legislative resolution, and it reads, whereas the Senate and the General Assembly of the State of New Jersey are pleased to salute Mega Gona, an admired member of her Garden State community who qualified and participated in the U.S. Women's Open as an amateur golfer, which took place from June 3rd through June 6th, 2021. And whereas during her second such appearance at this prestigious competition, Mega secured and shared a third-place title at the Olympic Club Lake Course, the latest in a string of stellar accomplishments on the links. And whereas other thrilling performances of hers include her status as a 4-time finalist in the drive, chip and putt contest, and her participation in this year's Augusta National Women's Amateur. And whereas an exemplary high school junior who hails from Holmdel, Monmouth County, who has been competing in golf tournaments since the age of 12 and has been coached by the first tee of Metropolitan New York, COO Katie Rudolph, Mega has also excelled on the stage, having played the Queen of Hearts during her school rendition of Alice in Wonderland, and she plans on attending Stanford University in the fall of 2022. Whereas she has been supported in her endeavors by her parents, Harry and Suda, and she delights in the company of her sister and fellow golfer with a really great name, it says right in there, Serena. And whereas New Jersey's young people who set their goals high, who persevere in the pursuit of those goals, and who reach their desired milestones and accomplish their objectives, stand as an example and an inspiration to their fellow citizens of all ages. And whereas it is altogether proper and fitting for this legislature to pause in its deliberations to acknowledge Mega as a young woman of strong character and exceptional determination. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and the General Assembly of the State of New Jersey that this legislature hereby lauds Mega Gona, pays tribute to her meritorious record of excellence within all the spheres of her life, and extends sincere best wishes for her continued successes and happiness. And be it further resolved that a duly authenticated of this copy of this resolution signed by the Senate President and Assembly Speaker, and further attested by the Senate Secretary and Assembly Clerk, be transmitted to me. God. Congratulations.
Group picture?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Congratulations.
Greg, they won't understand when
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Over here. Take a few, so just keep still. Okay, and then we'll take one with this, please. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So before we get to our public comment on the agenda items, I want to provide everyone a brief overview of tonight's agenda, which may answer some of the questions you may have. First, the Board of Education. On the consent agenda, we have approval for shared services agreements with the Board of Education for both the Class 3 Special Law Enforcement Officers and the School Resource Officer. As we discussed at our June meeting, the Township has generously proposed a cost sharing which will increase over the term of the Class 3 agreement to 50% of costs. Prior to that meeting, the Board of Education requested that we table their agreements so that they could review them further. We listened to their request and tabled the measures. Unfortunately, the Board of Education responded that the Township should pay all of the costs and otherwise has not engaged in the Township in any other requesting of a meeting at 5 o'clock tonight, the day of this meeting. In order to keep the program running, the consent agenda will approve the shared services agreements that were previously proposed and tabled. I would urge the Board of Education to approve these agreements at the July meeting. If they do not, the Board of Education will risk not having police in their schools this September, as staffing for these programs requires lead time. Ordinances. We'll be considering 2 zoning ordinances tonight. First, we'll be considering an introduction of an ordinance that adopts many zoning changes that were previously recommended by the Zoning Board, as well as an overhaul of the ordinance regulating township-held easements. Second, the agenda includes 2 versions of cannabis ordinances. The first ordinance would ban all cannabis establishments in Holmdel. The second ordinance would ban all cannabis establishments in Holmdel except cannabis cultivators. We'll continue discussion that we had at the last meeting on this issue and hopefully choose one of those 2 approaches. For these zoning ordinances, we have our Township Planner, Kate Keller, here to answer any questions. Public questions. The agenda also contains several introductions of ordinances that would put public questions on this November's general election ballot. I'm excited about this opportunity to provide voters with direct input into our local government. The first ordinance would approve an increase to Holmdel Township's open space trust funds. While we continue to hold the line on the municipal tax rate, I think it makes sense to let voters decide if there should be a 1-cent increase in the open space tax to allow for more township investments into open space. The second ordinance would approve an increase in benefits that are given to our volunteers, first responders, through what's called the LoSAP program. I believe we should provide our first aid and fire with a maximum benefit under state law and future cost of living adjustments, which this public question would also do. The third ordinance would ask the public whether the township should establish a charter study commission to look at the township committee form of government. Having served on the township committee for 10 years, I believe that our system of government is antiquated and does not function well. I specifically think that all Holmdel voters should elect the mayor, not the township committee. This ordinance would let Holmdel voters decide if we should have a charter study commission that would look into this issue further. The fourth ordinance would submit a referendum to voters on whether Holmdel should withdraw from the county library system and establish its own library system. As Holmdel residents know, our library used to be here at Town Hall in the basement. In 2017, we moved the library to Bell Works and now have a state-of-the-art facility. Unfortunately, after the move, the county library system has not increased the hours of operation for our Holmdel branch, even though it is located in the middle of a busy Bell Works facility. Right now, the library does not open on Mondays and Wednesdays until 1 p.m., closes on 3 after 5 weekdays at 5 p.m., and is not open on Sundays. While the township has not previously received a favorable response to our request to increase hours, I do believe that this agenda item has triggered public attention and will encourage the county to reconsider its treatment of the Holmdel Library branch. For these reasons, I would like to make a motion to table ordinance 2021-29 so that the township can further pursue conversations with the county on improving services to the Holmdel Library. Do I have a second?
Second.
Want to do roll call?
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 2021-29 will be tabled.
Thank you. That concludes my overview of the agenda. Now I'll open up the meeting to public comments on tonight's agenda items. Jenny?
Jenny Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. I am wearing my hat as I speak on this particular issue as a professional librarian, retired. I am also a former member of the Library Planning Advisory Board that was put in place when the discussion of moving the library from here to Bell Works went on, and then that was stopped once it moved. I just wanted to say that belonging to the county library has benefits that might not be obvious to you people. What happens in a library is very much more complicated than just walking up to the circulation desk and returning a book or taking one out. The vast quantity of the money that is spent in a library beyond salaries goes to the costs of the back room, otherwise known as technical services. This would mean buying all the books, processing them, paying for extremely expensive databases, e-books, these days DVDs, CDs, all this kind of business, and having the staff at the county headquarters providing the IT expertise to make it all work. this, you don't see when you come into the library or sit in your family room and haul up your PC to get what you want. But it is not necessarily in any way, shape, or form a good idea to immediately say we're going to go it on our own because we don't want to pay the county to run this backroom stuff. You need to be wary of what you're asking for. What we need right now is a cost-benefit library study, the costs of standing alone, being a member of the county library, or being a member of another consortium, best well-known to me is in Middlesex, where all the libraries that participated in are actually freestanding libraries that pool all their brain power to get essentially the same services that we have been receiving from Monmouth without being a member. So, shared costs are wonderful. Being able to run your own show is very nice, but somehow it isn't always necessarily the most expedient way of doing things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Just a reminder that the library was tabled for tonight, so that they were not doing any voting on it. And I could tell you that if it does come on in the future, if is a big if, there'll be a presentation on all those things that which is mentioned, as well as some other things that we want to bring to the public's attention. But it was for the voters to decide. It wasn't being done by the TC. It was just giving you an option. But there'll be a presentation if it comes on in the future.
Right, Mayor, if I
understand
may,
that.
just to remind everyone, this is about items that are on the agenda. That library is not on the agenda any longer. There will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting to speak on any matter.
So then you want me to get back up here at the end of the meeting instead of now?
Yes, yeah. Unless you're
Okay.
talking about an agenda item right now.
Well, I was going to until you tabled
Okay.
it. So I'll come back.
Okay. So this is literally just for items on tonight's agenda. But you don't have to do any of the ordinances that we're hearing on, because there'll be public comment on hearings on those ordinances. So really, it's mainly consent agenda items. Yes, miss?
I'd like to,
Come on, you gotta come on.
I'm sure you can hear me.
No, you have to identify yourself.
You just have to identify yourself.
This is a sudden.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
ma'am.
No. Identify yourself, your name and address
My
for the,
name is Sharon
to the microphone.
I live here in Holmdel, have been here
Can you
since
pick her up,
the
Wendy?
80s.
You pick her up?
I live
Excuse
on
me, ma'am, can you please come to the microphone, because we record the meetings, and so even though everyone in the room might be able to hear you, the recording won't pick up. And just a reminder, if you're speaking on the library, there's a time for that, it's not now. There's a time to speak on any
I'm
items.
speaking right now about why it is that we suddenly hear about the library being possibly yanked, and then we're not allowed to talk about it. That doesn't seem fair.
It's not an agenda item on tonight's agenda.
Well, then why was it brought up?
Because
There you go.
it's no longer on tonight's agenda.
I thought you'd make me sit down, but you didn't.
It seems as if this is
Oh,
being
yes,
a railroad.
Okay. Ralph?
Good evening, Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. It's nice to see everybody in person after a too long an interval, so thank you. And there's a lot on tonight's agenda, and I just want to try to briefly comment on several of the items. First of all, the Green Acres grant application. I support it. That grant application is just a first step. If a property, however, is accepted for the grant and is acquired using Green Acres funding, be aware you can never sell it.
Correct.
And hence, before one takes those final steps, one should make sure to have an appropriate use for the property. So I'm questioning whether the Green Acres funding is the appropriate use for some of the properties in question, and it's important to have such a plan. And support, also, you're going to be working with MCF, and there's also further potential for farmland funding, which may be more appropriate for some of the properties. A combination of one or both may be appropriate for some of the properties, as was done with both the Chase Reminiscent Tract and the F&F Tract. So there's lots to look at. With regard to the open space tax, usually I support it. At this point in time, I'm not ready to support this. We need to justify it to the residents and to the taxpayers, because it is a tax increase. Currently, the current tax brings in more than $1 million a year. So the first question I have is, how is that money being used? And what, say, for example, for the past 3, 4, 5 years, just what has those funds been spent on? A couple of items I know that was charged to the trust fund was acquisition cost of the Chase, now Reminiscent Tract, the F&F Tract. The Chase one is 20 years ago now. I think there was a 20-year bond. I don't know just when it was bonded. The same applies to F&F. It got complicated because some of that was refinanced at one point in time for interest rates. So just what are the payments required for the bonding for open space? And I'm suspicious, I'm not certain, that a lot of that gets paid off this year, next year, the following year, leaving a lot of room for other funding for other purposes. So one thing about the open space tax, it's not like the township budget where you set a budget and then a rate is calculated. It's the opposite. The tax rate is a fixed rate, and as assessments go up and down, the amounts collected go up and down. That could really jump this year. I did speak a few weeks ago with Eric Aguilar, the assessor. Real estate sales in Holmdel are going crazy. He anticipates that easily 10%, the tax rate might go up, the assessments might go up easily 10%. Zillow is saying right now sales prices in Holmdel are up 25% from the assessments. So that alone would generate more funds.
You can wrap up, Ralph.
Okay, so I think it's maybe appropriate, but if you're going to do something like that, you really need to put together a coherent story to sell that as being appropriate to the residents and the taxpayers. Two other items, and I'll comment on them later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I provide some information on questions
Sure.
about that? So I looked into the debt service costs. Today, we pay roughly about $500,000 in debt service for open space bonds. And starting next year, we're going to see a decrease of about $170,000. So 500 minus 170, that's about 330 we'd be paying if we don't have additions, if we don't bond again to purchase open space. If we do, then we will need the money to be able to support that.
What is the rest of the fund?
You know, that's it. Ralph. Yes, sir.
Brian Baums, 93 Center Avenue, Atlantic Highlands. On behalf of the Monmouth County Library Commission, I thank you guys for tabling this for a future date. I'd like to leave you with my cards. I, along with Barbara McMorrow, our fellow commissioner, are here to answer any questions you might have, but we look forward to scheduling a date with you for the future.
Thank you.
Can I
Thank
leave
you.
you?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you can give them to the clerk.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Francine Campus, 2 Country Squire Lane. Two things. One is on the whole open space tax. I just want to say, I think that's a wonderful thing. I'd pay more money just to make sure we keep buying up space to keep this town a wonderful place to live in. My concern is buying things with green acres. It means that it's open to other, whatever we do with it is open to other people, not just Holmdel, and that's my concern. Also, my question is, once we buy something with green acres, is that land not able to be constricted as farmland preserved? Because I don't want to see all the farmlands be bought up with my tax money and turned into recreation fields. I'll be perfectly honest, and I'm not against recreation, but that's not exactly what I want to pay all my money for. And to make this a recreation hub that people from the other parts of Monmouth County or the state can come and use. That's my first thing, so just caution there. I'm not against the tax. I really am not. My second thing is on the ordinance for the cannabis. You're saying you're going back and forth.
So we're going to have a hearing on that tonight, yes.
Okay,
Mayor, that's actually just up for introduction.
I'm sorry,
so
introduction.
This would be the appropriate
Yep.
time to comment.
Just say, I am opposed to both, okay? Because if we're saying we're going to give, let's say, our farmers an opportunity to grow another crop, I really don't see the farmers planting little plants where they used to grow corn. I think, as you had mentioned, Mayor Bontempo, they build greenhouses. And I don't want to replace farmland with greenhouses. We saw what happened with the solar farm. We were supposedly farming solar energy. What did that do? That opens up a can of worms in a number of ways for us. So, this is a new thing. I can't see why we just can't be cautious and say nothing, and then look at it at a later date. See what the other towns are doing and what's happening. Because I don't trust the people that want to grow it. They're in there for a profit. They're not in there to help other people. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mayor, Township Committee, Bill Hennigan, 41, pardon me, no, that's Ralph's. 13 Florida Drive, that was not planned. I guess I got it lucky, so that's good. I've been a resident, believe it or not, for 20 years in Holmdel. I've been a prior member of the Open Space Committee and the Bayonet Farm Advisory Committee. So I know a little bit what's going on. I spent probably half my 10 years or 20 years sitting in these meetings. Ralph brought up a lot of good points that obviously you will take, under advisement. I want to talk a little bit differently and more generally. So I prepared some remarks so I won't mess up. For many years, the Holmdel open space tax has been used to finance acquisition of open space in Holmdel, thus helping to preserve the town's bucolic characteristics and limit overdevelopment of open vistas while creating scenic passive as well as active public use areas. In several cases, open space preservation has also included historic buildings and barns located on these parcels of land. Residents need to be mindful that these buildings require initial and periodic structural maintenance, improvements, and regular maintenance to support ongoing public use, and in some cases, material revenue growth through various rental programs, such as Weddings at Bayonet Farm, which began in 2010 as a direct result of the town's capital improvement initiative. As a matter of return on the town's open space commitment, Bayonet Farm ranks 4th in a list of 17 amazing barn wedding venues in New Jersey. I just looked that up this afternoon.
Nice.
I gotta have a plug. Bayonet Farm is one notable example of the benefits of having an open space tax program that can help support ongoing structural integrity, public use, and revenue potential of its barns and main historical residence, commonly referred to as the Harding House. Given that material financial resources are needed to maintain and further improve upon the public use and rental possibilities of these structures, I am hopeful that the town will satisfactorily document the need for an increase in the open space tax, and that the residents of Holmdel will view any marginal increase in their tax assessment as simply an investment in their shared ownership of the unique character of Holmdel that we call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Okay.
JNL 18 Ladwood Drive. I'm actually speaking for one of our older friends in town who likes pets. She couldn't be here tonight. Quick question. How much was the bond release for Somerset? Dollar amount? That's number one. Okay. Number two, for a $500,000 house, if there are in town anymore, how much would the open space 1 cent increase be for a $500,000 house? For growing cannabis in town, would the property be taxed as agriculture or retail? I guess as agriculture. And what would the sales tax rate be on sales of that? And as far as the mayor's Monarch pledge, this woman was very pleased with it. What's the next step? Are townspeople going to be involved, or what is the town going to do? Thank you.
I could answer two of the questions, Mayor. The first with respect to the Bell Works bond release. There is a site improvement surety bond in the amount of $2.86 million, which would be released in its entirety under the resolution. There are also cash bonds that total $326,000 and change. The township would release all but $100,000 of that and hold the $100,000 back to allow for any further due diligence, such as a certificate of completion and anything else before then that arises. And that's based upon the request of Somerset and the township engineer's review of any of the bonded improvements to ensure that those have been satisfied prior to taking this action. With respect to the cannabis, under state law, the municipality is authorized to impose a 2% tax on the receipts with respect to the cannabis cultivation, which is allowed for under one of the two ordinances, and that ordinance does establish that tax if it were to be considered and adopted.
And is the property that the facility or land is on, is that agriculture tax base, or is it retail?
That would be a question for the assessor, I think, that I would defer to him on, but we can certainly provide you feedback.
But I mean, what the property?
The use.
The use, because I think that's really important. And 2%, I mean, 2% doesn't seem like much.
Well, that's what the legislature gave as the carrot for municipalities to go about.
I mean,
this.
on millions and millions of dollars, 2% is not much.
That's the number that is authorized.
And the Monarchs thing, what's the next step? The Monarch pledge?
There's several tasks involved with participating in it. I know one of them is to plant butterfly-friendly plants.
Yeah, by the way, I have no time for this. The question was, what is the public, can the public get involved at some point? I mean,
sure, if there's somebody that's interested, I would ask them to call our offices, call the recreation department. We have one of our recreation team members that's working specifically on this project. So if there's something that they would like to get involved in, for instance, one of the tasks is planting butterfly-friendly plants in certain areas throughout town, so that might be something that people would like to get involved in. So I encourage anyone to just call Town Hall, call the Recreation Department, and we'd be happy to enlist you in the effort.
And let's hope they're deer resistant, right?
Yes, that would be wonderful. With regards to the open space tax, I don't have a $500,000 house off of the top of my head. I have for the average household, which in Holmdel is a little over $700,000 this year. So with the increase, the total would be about $70 a year on that average household. 70, and that's for the full open space tax.
Yeah, that's not the increase.
That's not the increase, that's the
delta,
full.
oh, wow.
The delta, I mean, it would be 1 penny per thousand, $100 of assessed value.
Okay. So we're talking 20.
And we're going to...
It's minimal.
There'll be a full presentation at the next meeting before we have the public hearing on the open space, and you'll get back those questions more answered.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to put that in the newsletter,
Absolutely.
It will be.
Anybody else in the public? None being seen, I'll close public portion. Move to the consent agenda. Council, do you have an update on any of the resolutions?
Yes, I do, Mayor. There is one resolution on the agenda. It's Resolution 2021-197. We left some blanks on the resolution because the RFP was returnable just this morning. The names that are being inserted, the Township Committee discussed this in executive session just prior to the meeting and is seeking to award a contract to Government Strategy Group in the amount of $24,900. And they were one of two bidders on the project and were the lower bid. I would also like to note for the record that upon the opening of the bids, the administrator elected to recuse herself from any consideration of this contract award, so it was brought directly to the Township Committee for its consideration. So with that said, Mayor, I guess a motion would be in order for resolutions 2021-180 to 2021-204, noting Government Strategy Group.
Move.
Do you have a second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes, I need to recuse myself of 2021-183, 2021-184.
And Wendy, I'm yes with a note.
Just going to ask you that. Okay, so resolutions 2021-180 to 2021-204 have been successfully passed.
Thank you, Wendy. Next, introduction of ordinances.
Introduction of ordinance 2021-24, which is amending Chapter 30, Development Regulations of the Code of the Township of Holmdel. Motion to adopt on first reading and publish in the Asbury Park Press and set the public hearing for August 10th, 2021.
Do you have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 2021-24 will be published in the Asbury Park Press and set for the public hearing. The next ordinance for introduction is Ordinance 2021-25A, which is prohibiting licensed cannabis establishments to the extent authorized pursuant to PI 2021 C.16. Motion to adopt on first reading and publish in the Asbury Park Press and set the public hearing for August 10th, 2021.
So this is one of two cannabis ordinances I put on the agenda. So this is restricting both. Do we want to have any discussion on this one?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss it a little bit. At the last meeting, Mayor, you recall I wanted to give our farming community an opportunity to explore the possibility of cultivating marijuana since it is legal in the state right now. And I promised the public that I would do a little bit of research on that. And I reached out to some of the farmers. And to my surprise, no one has expressed any interest in cultivating marijuana in this town. In fact, they don't want to be burdened with all the legal remedies that go around it and the restrictions. So I'm going to move that ordinance.
Yeah.
I'm a yes for that ordinance right now. Thank you.
So any other discussion on A?
Did we have a motion and a second?
No, we're just having discussion,
We're just
right?
having discussion?
Yes.
That's correct.
Motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to make,
Okay.
yeah. Keep this on? How do you keep this on?
It's push to talk. Right, Wendy?
All right. Since our last TC meeting, I took the opportunity to research this topic extensively and evaluate the impact of the state law and the cost benefit of cultivating cannabis in Holmdel. I'm going to share that with you. First, you should know that over 57% of Holmdel voters voted to legalize marijuana in the last election. I was not one of those, just so you know. Given that it is now state law, I wanted to evaluate the impact from a fiscal standpoint and from a quality of life perspective. The state law will have a monetary impact, as we are likely to see a reduction in charges related to the possession of illegal drugs and therefore see a reduction in associated fines. The monetary impact to Holmdel from this law is minimal. The law, however, allows us to collect 2% from the cultivation of marijuana and the sale of marijuana, and 1% from the distribution of marijuana. The question was whether we could benefit from this rule without impacting our quality of life. Clearly, the only option that could provide us the revenue and not impact or have a limited impact on the character of Holmdel was to just allow the cultivation of cannabis. In analyzing this option, I found that there are three ways of cultivating cannabis. One, in an open field, which is not viable in the Northeast. Second, in a greenhouse. And third, in a warehouse facility, i.e. in a controlled environment with grow lights. Most commercial growers opt for the warehouse option. While this may be capital intensive, these facilities produce the most, up to 5 yields per year. Given that our interest in allowing the cultivation of cannabis was to benefit from the 2% tax, I'm only interested in this warehouse option as this provides the most revenue to Holmdel. It is estimated that these commercial growers produce $6 million worth of cannabis in a 10,000 square foot warehouse facility annually. The potential revenue to Holmdel from such a facility would be approximately $120,000 per year. Most cities and towns that have allowed this warehouse-based cultivation of cannabis quickly realized that they had to enact various zoning laws to restrict the number, size, and the location of such warehouses. Given the size and the character of Holmdel, it's hard to envision allowing more than 1 or 2 such facilities. The potential economic benefit would therefore be between $120,000 and $240,000 annually. It appears that the work involved in enacting various ordinances to limit the size of these facilities, identify the right location, and ensure the quality of life in Holmdel is not significantly impacted for a very limited revenue potential, not to mention the significant public opposition to allowing the cultivation of marijuana in Holmdel. I'm therefore inclined to not pursue this opportunity and focus on projects that would have a significantly higher revenue potential with more favorable public opinion.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? No. Okay. So do we have a motion on?
Move.
Do we have a second? Roll call, please.
Just to clarify, this is on, Mayor, this is on 2021-25A, which is prohibiting all cannabis.
Correct.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
So ordinance 2021-25A has been successfully introduced and will be published in the Asbury Park Press and set for public hearing.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. The next ordinance is 2021-25B.
No, I think we go to 26.
Do we have unanimous consent of the committee to skip over 25B?
Yes.
Yes. Skip.
Okay, so next we're going to introduction of ordinances for public questions. The first ordinance is 2021-26, which is authorizing the public question to increase the annual collection rate to the Holmdel Township Open Space, Recreation, Floodplain Protection, and Farmland and Historic Preservation Trust Fund. Motion to adopt on first reading and publish in the Asbury Park Press and set the public hearing for August 10th, 2021.
Motion.
Move.
Second. Do a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Catali?
So on this ordinance introduction, I'm a yes. I'm with Ralph Blumenthal on this one, though. We discussed this a couple of times in executive session. I think the committee agrees. I think we need a plan, and we don't have a plan based on, no, I shouldn't say that. We're working a plan. We haven't identified property yet, so it's important that we identify property, I believe, and I encourage the administrator to continue with the negotiations on what we've talked about today so that we can hopefully have more information for the public when we do the public hearing. Because I don't believe we should be talking about any increase in taxes, and this is a tax increase. But I'm a yes right now for the introduction.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes, I agree with my colleague here that we should have more information on how that money will be spent before we introduce something like this. So in spirit and generally speaking, I do support this and I am a yes, but I kind of think we're putting the carriage ahead of the horse here. So I hope that we do have something soon that we can present so that they know exactly where that money is going. So thank you, yes.
Mr. Santana?
I'm of the same opinion. I like what Mr. Blumenthal said, which is define proper allocation of the money that's collected. So I'm a yes on this with the hope that we'll have some language around that.
Ms. Weber?
I'm a yes, but I would add a slightly different take on that, and I support the comments made by Mr. Hennigan about really laying out the use of the open space tax and the need to use some of that tax to preserve some of the open space assets that we've already acquired in terms of both historic buildings and also maintenance of those open space sites so that they're accessible to the public. For instance, the Traffic and Bike Safety Committee is proposing a bike, pedestrian, horse, bicycle, roller skate, whatever, path from the high school all the way to Cross Farm. And this is something that could be used to help support something like that. And so I think we have to look a little more broadly on not just land acquisition, but once we acquire the land, what do we do with it, right? And how do we make it land that's useful to the community? And that is something I think we've recently learned from the pandemic, of the need to have accessible open space, not just open space for the sake of open space. So that would be my emphasis, that I'm a yes. Thank you.
Mayor Bontempo.
So for those of you that are at our planning session back in February or watched the video, so Township Committee was pretty transparent in one of our goals for this year was acquiring more open space. And it couldn't have been more clear during the pandemic how the open space in our town was a focal point for residents in our town and even neighboring towns to come and actually get out of their house during the lockdown in the pandemic. So we've been pursuing open space for many months now, and it's not as easy as you think. It's been very challenging. Some landowners unwilling to even have conversations with us in our own town. The reason why we had to put it on tonight's agenda was because there are deadlines in order to get it on the November ballot. So we have to do it now. I wish we were further along. It hasn't been for lack of effort by the administrator or her staff. But you will see between now and November, they'll have plenty of information in order to make your decision on whether you support this or not. And there'll be more information shared at our August meeting, and hopefully more forthcoming from there from additional acquisitions, negotiations that we are involved in. So I could tell you firsthand that if we don't do something with our open space, acquire it, preserve it, it's going to be taken up by developers, and the town's going to change because there's not that many significantly sized plots of land that are left in this town. So with that, I'm a firm yes for this introduction.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so ordinance 2126 has been successfully introduced, and it will be published in the Asbury Park Press and set the public hearing for August 10th, 2021. The next ordinance is 2021-27, which is authorizing public question to increase benefits for the volunteer first responders pursuant to Length of Service Award Program, LOSAP. Motion to adopt on first reading and publish in the Asbury Park Press and set the public hearing for August 10th, 2021.
Have a motion?
Move.
Have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Our first responders were a backbone in this community during the entire pandemic. There can be a better thing we do for them in supporting this initiative also in November. Yes.
Okay. So ordinance 2021-27 has been successfully introduced and will be published in the Asbury Park Press and set for a public hearing. The next ordinance is 2021-28, which is authorizing a public question to establish a charter study commission.
Do we have a motion?
Move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
Okay, so ordinance 2021-28 was successfully introduced and will be published in the Asbury Park Press and the public hearing set.
Tabled.
So, okay, ordinance 2021-29 was tabled.
Yep.
So our next order of business is hearing on ordinances. So ordinance 2021-19 is a bond ordinance providing an appropriation of $2,800,000 for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Holmdel in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of $2,670,450 in bonds or notes of the township for financing part of the appropriation.
Any TC comments before we go to public? Any public comment? Yes, come on up.
Jenny Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. What are we buying for $2.67 million? That's a lot of candy bars.
So that was on the list that the administrator provided, when was it, when we first introduced it? So go ahead.
Is that the end of your comment or questions?
Yes, that was
Okay.
the whole question. That's just a lot of money for just saying,
It is quite a lot of money. I would note that $1.5 million of that is for the road program, for the 2021 road program. About $600,000 of that is for building improvements, including renovating the police locker rooms and the EMS buildings. And then there is there are a number of items, everything from IT equipment to gear for our first responders. And that was all in the budget presentation and is available to the public. Some repairs at some of our parks as well.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this ordinance? Closed public comment. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Critelli?
So last meeting, I was pretty clear why I didn't support the introduction of this, and nothing's really changed in my mind. I saw the report from the Recreation Committee this afternoon. I just think that it's being slow-rolled. It's been years. I really believe we should be doing more for the recreation community, so I am a no on this ordinance.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes, I also am a no on this because I feel like there should be some money in there for recreation. I did read the report. It does look like there is a need for, or that they are requesting a turf field. It's something that we've all wanted, we've all advocated for, and I believe that we just can't keep kicking this can down the road. And I'm a no. We need to rediscuss this for recreation funds.
Thank you. Ms. Weber?
Well, you skipped
Mr.
me.
Santana, sorry.
I'm a yes on this, and this is a very important bond ordinance, simply because it's primarily used to build our fire, first aid, and EMS facilities, and this is sorely needed, and it's important that we pass this ordinance, unfortunately. So I'm a yes on this vote.
Thank you. Ms. Weber?
I support this bond ordinance introduction because specifically it supports our public safety officers, which I have said when we had our planning meeting, I wholeheartedly supported. Their locker room is devastatingly embarrassing. It hasn't been touched since the 1970s, and I wouldn't put my dog in there, let alone a person. And this is in that bond ordinance. It also supports the repaving of our roads, which our residents have said unequivocally is their highest priority. We have roads that haven't been repaved in 25 and 30 years with significant potholes and damage to cars. And it does provide for some recreational improvements as well as the IT improvements that are critical to this township. So I support the items that are in here. If my colleagues wish to introduce some other ordinance at another time, then so be it, but I am wholeheartedly in support of the items listed in this bond ordinance. I'm a yes.
Thank you. Mayor Bontempo?
So this is our only meeting in July. We don't meet again until August 10th. So our road improvement program for 2021 is now in jeopardy. So we should probably post that on our website, that the people that thought they're getting the roads paved this year are not going to get the roads paved. We have a lot of issues with emergency services that have significant financial needs that this covers. And we did this bond ordinance to be able to keep the tax rate the same where it was. So I thought it was we worked that out in the workshop. Everyone knew what the agenda was going to be for tonight. There were no secrets. There's nothing new that was slid in or pulled out. We've been fairly transparent with the public on this, and I am a yes. This should have been done tonight. Needs to be done, and it's gonna significantly impact a lot of residents negatively.
I think it's implicit with the mayor's comments, but just for the public's understanding. Oh, do you want to cast your vote, Mayor?
I'm a yes.
Sorry. Just to clarify, the local bond law requires a 2/3 vote for the final adoption of a bond ordinance, which on a 5-member governing body is 4 votes. So this motion fails.
Could I ask a question on this bond? Wasn't there some portion of this money allocated to the fire department for the purchase of
Fire truck?
Equipment, furniture, etc.?
There are some public safety, there's various public safety
But
equipment
specifically
for
fire.
both police,
Yeah.
for
Yes.
all police,
Yeah.
fire, and first aid.
Yep.
Yeah, so this potentially, I don't know if this is true or not, maybe somebody can tell me, could put a damper on our ability to provide fire safety needs, satisfy our fire safety needs.
Well, the building has to be equipped, you're correct. And these were the furnishings for the building.
And this will continue to impact our ISO rating as well, which means we will have to pay more in our homeowners insurance premiums.
Is that a fact?
I pay, my homeowners, I checked with, so let me clarify this. No, let me clarify this. So when my homeowner's insurance premium went up by $1,000 in 2018, I called my insurance company and I asked them to detail me why my insurance premium went up. And they said there are basically 3 reasons. 1, claims in the area. 2, any work done in the house. And the 3rd item is your ISO rating. And since I hadn't done any work in the house and there were no storms, the claims in the area remained the same. They basically said it was impacted because your ISO rating went from a 5, which is average, to a 9, which is very bad. And since then, in 2018, our ISO rating has remained at 9, which is very bad. And we have a serious need to fix that. And our goal was to get this new fire truck, and we also wanted to get another fire truck and bring back the ISO rating down to a 5, so we pay lower in homeowners insurance premiums. So remember that. It's an indirect tax on you if your homeowners insurance premiums go up. And that's caused by this ISO rating.
Thank you. So, Wendy?
So the motion fails for 2021-19. The next ordinance is 2021-20, which is an ordinance authorizing establishment of government energy aggregation program.
Do I need to recuse myself? No. Okay. Is any public comment on the energy program?
This is a public hearing on ordinance 2021-20.
Jay, following up on my comments at the last meeting, excuse me, regarding this, it appears the economics are worth it, but again, I'm from background in this business. Often these deals are not worth it long-term, and I just hope we're really going to be diligent on this and get the heck out quick if it's not worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from the public? Okay, Ralph.
Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stoneybeak Road. Just following up on Jay's comment, there have been times in the past when the state made available supposedly competitive utility arrangements, and in hindsight, those were not favorable. They'd tell you the rate's going to be this for the first month, and the next month, and it turned out for almost everybody it was a money loser. They reinitiated some of these programs a couple of years ago, and so far I haven't found anyone in New Jersey who's found them to be worthwhile. Potentially by going through an aggregation process, working together with other townships, maybe all of you together can negotiate a better deal. And that's, cross your fingers. And I'm with Jay. If you can make something good, I think we'll all be applauding what you're doing. If it doesn't work, don't hesitate going the other way. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, I'm not sure if you were at the last meeting, there was a presentation on this. This is different than individuals going to select their energy supplier, and there is a guaranteed rate for the length of the contract, so it won't change from month to month. But there are very important factors to consider to both of your points.
Any other public? Closed public comment of a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
So ordinance 2021-20 is successfully passed. The next ordinance is ordinance 2021-21, an ordinance authorizing the leasing of certain capital equipment by the Township of Holmdel, New Jersey from the Monmouth County Improvement Authority and the execution of a lease and agreement relating thereto.
I'll recuse myself on this one, Deputy Mayor.
All right, the public hearing, any comments from the public? Ralph?
Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. The list of items is in the agenda item. Could you just briefly comment on what kinds of items you choose to go with the Improvement Authority versus a capital bond? Because those are the two together constitute the capital program for the township.
Bill, you want?
Is that it, Ralph?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I could make a comment. The ones we're leasing are a shorter term, like 5 to 15 years. The reason being, if we go out for a long-term serial bond, we'll be paying for assets that we no longer are utilizing like 20 years from now.
And
Depreciate.
doing it through the county is a cost-effective way of doing it.
Yes, it is.
Good, thank you.
Any other public comment? Nope. Call the roll.
Motion.
We need to-
Motion.
What, motion? Sorry.
Move.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
I recuse.
So ordinance 2021-21 has been successfully adopted. The next ordinance is 2021-22, which is authorizing the guarantee of the Township of Holmdel, New Jersey, or payment of principal and interest on the capital equipment lease revenue bonds, Series 2021, Holmdel Board of Education project for the Monmouth County Improvement Authority.
I'll recuse.
Any public comment on this ordinance? None? Township Committee? No? Motion?
Motion.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
So 2021-22 has been successfully adopted. The last ordinance for public hearing is 2021-23, which is a salary ordinance for non-aligned employees.
Public hearing. Any comments from the public? Yes.
Jenny Blumenthal again, 41 Stony Brook Road. What is a non-aligned employee? Somebody who can't walk straight?
Through you, Mayor, these are employees that are not represented by a union, a public sector union. We have to be fancy in government.
Any other public? Closed public, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
Okay, so 2021-23 has been successfully adopted.
Perfect, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Open up for department updates. CFO, Bill, any updates?
Just one item, Mayor. We did receive our first allotment of the America Rescue Plan. We received $875,604. And we received the additional $875,000 next year. We have about 3 years to spend that money.
Great, thank you.
I have a question on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Are there any, what are the rules on how we can spend the money?
We don't have that much time tonight, and nobody knows, actually.
Yeah, there's
Thank
a
you.
lot. It's pretty restrictive. A lot of it's going to be probably in the Holmdel, probably used for sewer infrastructure, I believe.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Engineer Ben?
Nothing specific tonight, Mayor, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Administrator?
Yes, Mayor, I want to apologize and correct how I presented something earlier. I quite frankly just read my notes wrong. The average home in Holmdel is about $700,000, as I said earlier. The current open space tax is approximately $175 on that average home. Raising the open space tax by 1 penny would increase that about $70 for the year. To the previous question, a $500,000 house, it would raise it about $50 per year. It's a penny, so it's 1 penny per $100 of assessed value. I apologize for the confusion earlier. Other than that, and all of the items on the agenda, I have nothing additional tonight, but I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Attorney?
No update, Mayor, but happy to answer any questions.
Good. We'll go to boards and committees. Committeeman Critelli?
Yes, I'll have a community development update as soon as we get done with the analysis by the Government Strategies Group, which I'm pleased to say should be pretty quick. So within the next month or two.
Thank you. Committeeman Lucarelli?
Nothing this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Committeeman Santana?
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I have a report from the Holmdel Recreation Advisory Council. They held a meeting on Monday night and went over the previous plans, options, needs, etc., relative to recreation fields, and made the following recommendations. The committee acknowledges that Holmdel-based youth athletic leagues need additional access to fields, given time and weather constraints, which make scheduling practices and games difficult under current conditions. It is not necessarily the number of fields, but rather when and how the fields can be used responsibly. They recognize that while most teams have challenges in terms of inclement weather and evening lighting, the teams that currently have the biggest challenges in terms of scheduling are football, girls field hockey, boys and girls lacrosse, rugby, and cheerleading. Given the above, the RAC members in attendance unanimously recommend to the Holmdel Township Committee the following. Continue to actively pursue an equitable land swap with Monmouth County for the land that is part of Holmdel Park across from the high school on Crawford's Corner Road. If successful, install a field with lights and preferably artificial turf. Direct the township engineer to study and make a presentation on lighting technology for athletic fields and the spillage effects of such lighting. Make a formal request to the Board of Education to consider the following. Making field space on Board of Ed property available for lights and/or turf, where the Township and Board of Ed can explore options for shared infrastructure investment opportunities. Potential field space may include, but are not limited to, the field next to Rogie, old tennis courts, the property located toward the back of the high school by the Garden State Parkway, the old soccer field, and the property on the side of Sat School. Invest in infrastructure improvements to the fields at Village School, or consider selling the property back to the township for a nominal fee so the township can make said improvements, and work to accommodate the AYF cheer program's early season practice needs on Board of Ed property. And it was noted that we have 2 new gyms at the high school that should make that feasible. The other recommendations include exploring a location for municipal tennis courts and pickleball courts, which would enable the town to reinstate its municipal tennis program, and continue working toward developing a plan for improvements at the Holmdel Swim Club. That's it.
Thank you. There was, if those of you that may not be aware, there was a fire at a residence in Holmdel on Saturday. I didn't get the full report yet, but our fire department was very responsive on site, mutual aid, everybody worked in, they got to the house, nobody was injured, and they're able to get there in time to get the house out before any significant damage occurred. And because it was in a condo or townhouse, it obviously could have affected other homes. So I want to just commend our fire department for their immediate response, plus the mutual aid from the towns around us that were on site in helping our guys and gals out. They did a amazing job. It went very quickly, and just acknowledge them for their incredible response time and all the effort and hard work that these guys put into their job. That's the only comment I have. Open up for any public comment tonight. Yes? Different role, right?
How are you? Eric Hines, 3 Skyview. I'm sitting up here, I really don't know if it's way or road, but I have a new address, and it's 3 Skyway. It's something. I don't know if it's road or place, so it's as of today. So just a couple comments and then a question. Number one, in regards to the open space, obviously I'm a huge believer, providing that there's a plan. But I strongly encourage all of you to consider the same way that we did the Callan Farm. Because it was a great point that was made, is that once we obtain the land, and if you remember with F&F, then it's the responsibility of taking care of it. Now, we got lucky, we had a great lease with a great farmer, but the more that we set up these where we just buy the farmland rights and put the responsibility on the owner, I think that's a much better process. The Callan Farm was a home run, and it literally cost the town less than $200,000, as you remember. So, look, you know, you're in charge, obviously. But if you could take every farm that we have left, which is not a lot, but there's still 20 or 30, I believe, these small farms, and buy every single one, I think that's a great strategy for the town. So that was one. Number two, just to answer, somebody brought up about, you know, if the real estate boom, which is happening, you know, if my house goes from $1 million to $1.2 million, I just kind of, for the benefit of the residents, wanted to remind everyone, if everyone's house goes up 20%, your taxes don't go higher, the tax rate will come down. So, you know, that's, okay. And lastly, I'm really relieved tonight, you know, as the proud owner of a new farm, I had zero desire, and I'm glad to see there's unanimous about bringing drugs. And maybe I just was caught up in too much Nancy Reagan, would just say no, but there's simply no amount of money that is worth bringing, to me, the gateway drug into our community. And we can argue whether or not it's good or bad, or, I respect the fact that we've legalized it, but I think in this community, and I'm shocked if that's true, but I'm sure it is, Prakash, 57% of people voted to legalize it. I think we're going to pay for this in the long run, and I'm really happy to see that we've taken a step back. But lastly, I do have a question on that, because when we talk about money and we're looking for other revenue sources, over the last few months, there's been a lot of talk about the pilot. And I think some worry that the pilot funds were not going to come in as anticipated. Correct? I mean, that was some of the, and I don't know who made the comment one time. There was even the threat that we'd have to give money back. Now, I don't think that's a precedent that's ever been set before. But being that the world is coming back, is that still a worry that we would have, or that we can't budget for the pilot funds?
So go.
Okay, and then I'll just follow it up with this, and because the one thing that I think doesn't change, right, is that the age-restricted homes, which is 185, and they average about 15,000, right? As soon as we get a CO, that can be part of the budget. So I know that they're selling rapidly. So I don't know if it was 130 or 140. I know it's my 3 minutes. I'm talking fast. So. I just want to make sure I understand it, because that's about $2 million in extra revenue. So I just hope that, there's not many towns that get an extra $2 million revenue. So it's a responsibility that, I'm sure you take serious, but I think that when we look at the advantages that we have in Holmdel, there are advantages that no other town has. So regardless of the building, which I'm curious, and I'd love to get the feedback on what, Somerset is telling us, but regardless of the status of the economics, the age-restricted homes will bring us a stream for the next 20 years like no other towns have seen. So I do feel strongly that we will have the capital, again, the low interest rates, to do some really great things for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
With regards to budgeting in the pilot, the speaker is correct. The homes, both the age restrictions and the estate homes, those pilots are relatively set. The pilot has the potential to fluctuate on the physical building of Bell Works. We are anticipating getting their final audit at the end of this month. And that can fluctuate depending on the leases that are collected based on that building. And we can budget based on what we collected last year, unless in future budgets, unless there's something significant that changes that we can show. That being said, we were being conservative toward the beginning of this year because of the pandemic and because a large portion of the space at Bell Works is office space, and people weren't going to offices. There was the potential that what we bill based on the previous year's rents, and so there was the potential that what we collected last year might be owed back because they didn't collect as much rent as we had billed. We are expecting that final report at the end of the month. I will say it looks like we were being cautious, and I'm optimistic about what the numbers are going to be.
Are you allowed to publicly comment and speak on the preliminary report that we received?
Given the nature of the way Somerset conveyed the numbers to us, I'd prefer if we keep it confidential until they provide us the final, but I think, the administrator is certainly signaling that things are looking favorable.
Yeah, and just to clarify what the administrator said, it's the 185 age restricted that the speaker noted, not the estate homes are not part of the pilot. Right. And the building is. No, that's fine. And I think there was a lot of concern because a meeting that I was in April of 2020, there was dire situation where from the developer that things were not looking positive, right? Because nobody knew how long, how bad, if everyone was going to come back to the office. So it was not over-exaggerated. There was a lot of concern because we weren't being shared numbers, but there were also some outside forces that helped spur those numbers up. From the government funding, and also they got a big boost from the movie industry, right, from the filming that took place there. Significant. So, and that comes into, right, that's part of if they take that money in, that goes into the pilot, so that we benefited from that, and nobody saw, right, that the movies taken off the way they did, and that property was in such demand to be filmed at, so it certainly helped us, and that also was like a feeder, right? So now the food establishments in there were bringing more people back because of the work that was coming in. The trailers were on site. They needed to feed the people, blah, blah. So it was a whole ecosystem that kind of unexpectedly popped up as the pandemic slowly started to wind down. So a lot of moving parts, and signs are better than they were a year ago.
Can I make a comment? So it's important that we don't get too excited about this revenue for a variety of reasons. You're right that the Toll Brothers home at max capacity will give us $2.8 million, but we don't know anything about Bell Works. But more importantly, this was made clear by our financial advisors in a public meeting that our debt service cost is going to be at $6 million roughly. Given that it's 3.5 now, and it's going to go up because we are converting a lot of these short-term bonds, $33 million worth of short-term bonds into permanent financing. So as a result, our debt service costs will be about $6 million. Not only that, our reserves have to go up proportionately. So it's right now at 3.5, which means we have to set aside, I'm guessing at this point, another $500,000 to $4 million in reserves. So 6 plus 4 is $10 million of current and future revenues already spoken for. So let's be careful. Let's not get too excited about our revenue, because $10 million starting next year, next February, if I remember right, will be spoken for.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Just changing the subject, I'd like to say I'm very pleased, Eric, that we agree on two things tonight. The marijuana not happening in Holmdel, and I took the lead on that, and the open space. So thank you. Happy to see us coming to terms.
Anybody else in the public? Ron?
Ron Emma, 32 Ladwood Drive. Just to be clear, the ordinance that was turned down tonight, the 2.6 million, did that include the equipment for the new fire truck, as well as the new locker rooms and the expanded EMS building? That's number one. Okay. Number two, I also understand the need for turf fields and have been a proponent of turf fields, but let's be clear what just happened here tonight. Mr. Catelli and Mr. Lucarelli were the deciding votes to not pass the money for public safety. So in essence, though I am for turf fields trumped public safety. Secondly, our roads won't get paved because of the votes tonight. I would also like to just pose this question, because if we go back to the rec study that was done in 2018, HYA made a recommendation of the original $2.5 million bond that was passed to turf the infield of Phillips Park. So $250 of that went to turf the infield. Lo and behold, the next thing we know, somehow an additional $700,000, and maybe Mr. Catelli can comment on this, was allocated for the outfield. So not only did the infield get turfed, which was approved and recommended by HYAA, the outfield was also done. So the whole field was done. Maybe the argument is you can't do the infield without doing the outfield. I get that. But maybe the comment should be, the question is, where did that $700,000 come from? I understand it was approved with a consent agenda or whatever, but there was a $700,000 which could have today gone towards the turf field that everybody is proposing. So, Mr. Catelli, maybe you could comment on how that $700,000 came about, who was for it, and how it got passed without any public comment. Thank you.
All I can tell you, Ron, is that the Bob Ward, our recreation director, worked exclusively with the HYA commissioners, and there were a bunch of, and Greg would remember this, it changed multiple times. Once the bond was introduced, we were just committed to spending the money within the requirements of all of the user groups. So I probably have 6 or 7 or 8 different variations. No, he could. I don't have a problem with him. You can't do it. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm being overruled.
Yeah.
There are several variations to that, and I'm sure that Mr. Bob Ward can provide that to you if you want to take a look at that.
No, please don't comment from the audience.
I also just want to note for the record that the improvements being referenced were approved by resolution of the Township Committee. There was a bond that was issued, and there was a construction contract that was issued by resolution pursuant to that bond ordinance.
Ralph?
Hello again, Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road. Just a quick comment on 2 of the other items that you considered tonight. First, the amended development regulations. A bunch of those items were things that the zoning board had made recommendations of over the years, and I'm pleased to see that moving forward. The zoning board will have a meeting next week, and we'll be having many of those things date back before I was on the zoning board, and I'm going to refer it to the people who made the original recommendations. And I suspect everything is going to be fine, but we'll be looking at it, and if there are any issues, we'll let you know. With regard to the form of government, I'm in favor of that proposal to look at what's most appropriate, and there are multiple issues in that whole thing. One question I had after having read the thing, or what was in the agenda item, is that, as I understand it, this puts a motion on the ballot in November to whether you do or do not want to form a commission. If I read the fine print, you elect the commissioners the same day. How does that work, and who gets to say who becomes a candidate on the ballot before you even know if there is going to be a commission? How does that work? And just lastly, since you want everything all at once, just with regard to the open space tax again, you can follow up at another time, and hopefully as you provide the information about it. From what you said earlier, Prakash, that $500,000 was being currently used for debt service. The total collected is something like 1.2. So where's the other 700,000 going? Hopefully there'll be answers to that. So if you could answer a question about the government form election, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. You have a seat. You have a seat.
That's it?
Yeah, you can have a seat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with your break.
Sure. With respect to the Faulkner Act ordinance, under the Faulkner Act, if there were a final adoption of the ordinance, it would create a window for individuals to elect to run as candidates for the Charter Study Commission if they were interested. And then the November ballot would, as you referenced, contain a proposition yes or no, and also a concurrent election for individuals to the Charter Study Commission.
No, there's no from the audience.
They will file petitions if interested.
Correct.
Okay.
Petitions would be filed in accordance with the Faulkner Act.
Do you have anything you had to comment?
Just to the open space
Okay.
question. Just to clarify, in this year's budget, approximately $620,000 is going toward bond principal, and we have another $100,000 and change going toward interest on bonds in the open space. There's approximately $350,000 that goes towards the maintenance of some of the open space. I will say a lot of the maintenance in the open space gets covered from our general budget as well, just because we luckily have a lot of it and it costs a lot to maintain.
So I think what you're saying is that the open space fund does not cover all the costs for maintaining and running our open space.
Correct.
So
The total appropriations in the budget this year is $1,091,000.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Francine, go.
Francine Campus, 2 Country Squire Road. My first question is one I'm kind of calm about, but are there solar panels going to be put up on the new firehouse? And if not, why not? Because if we're pushing towards solar energy, I would think a new building should have that. My next question, well, I'll first make a comment. Thank you, Mayor Bontempo, Deputy Mayor Weber, and Township Committeeman Prakash Satana for voting for that ordinance that was denied tonight. I ask Mr. Lucarelli and Critelli, directly to you people, you see recreation, a turf field, being more important than public safety and paving the roads? You want to talk about kicking down the road? Kicking down the road has been paving this town. I've moved in 1985, and neither of the 2 streets in my development have ever been repaved, and I'm more than happy to send you pictures of the conditions of those roads, which are horrible, okay? One of the streets was on the program for last year, and it never was done. So now I'm being told that those streets will never even be considered, but I can look forward to a turf field. You're asking us to pass a raise in open space tax, which will go for recreation, but you're telling me that you want money for a turf field. How do you expect to get support for a bond ordinance for a turf field when it's on record? And I'm glad we have these meetings filmed, because I'm going to tell people to watch it, that the 2 of you thought that a turf field was more important than paving roads and public safety. And I'd like to know, is that your position as committeeman?
Nancy, I'm sorry.
No, Nancy, that's my sister. I'm the twin,
I
so that's why
apologize.
he's mistaken.
Francine, I'm happy to answer.
Before you comment,
If she was here, she'd say the same thing. Okay.
Any other comment?
You got to finish, and then I can respond.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to just finish. I wish there was a way for you to be able to re-vote on this, because I can't imagine that you people would really think. Deputy Mayor Kathy Weber just made a report tonight, so we know we're working on the needs of this town for recreation. We are. We're not closing our eyes. Nobody's denying it's needed. But please, don't hang good roads and public safety as a threat, because that's the way I view it, okay?
Thank you, Francine. So it's not a threat. I've been up, let me just say a few things. I've been sitting here for 8.5 years, and I've been a big supporter of paving roads, of public safety, of the new firehouse. So I am not putting recreation over the needs of any of that. What I'm trying to indicate to everyone is that we can do both. And this committee knows that my position is we can do both. I've been an advocate for the youth program enhancements for years, And I do not agree with the assessment that we don't have the money to do it. What I'm saying is we should add to the $2.8 million enough money so that we can do a multi-purpose turf field down the road so that the money's committed. We're not going to borrow the money right away. We don't have to because we don't have a location. I will point out that in 2019, there were no roads paved. Remember 2019, when the man sitting in the audience was mayor? And he was viciously attacked for an entire year, which we're not going to get into. But this committee didn't move any capital that year. So there was no paving done in 19, and there will be paving this year if my colleagues agree to meet me halfway. We don't, facial expressions, they don't pick that up on the camera, Francine. They only see me right now. That's okay. I get it. So I'm willing to have a discussion about a revised capital ordinance that we could introduce next month. But my colleagues, the mayor, the deputy mayor, and Committeeman Santana need to work with us.
Which I have been, Tom.
No, work with us, okay, Kathy? I'm not talking about your recreation committee. You guys have been working every month, I get that.
Yeah, really hard. 3 hours Monday night.
So let's talk about, at a future session, coming up with some capital for a turf field that a committee in the future will be able to move on. I only have 5 months left. So I'm not going to be here to make decisions on whether it's at the field across from the high school. And that's interesting that came out of your committee because there was no interest in that trade forever. So now that it's back on, it's been 3 years that it's been a topic and we haven't moved on it. So kicking the can down the road is something that government does, and I'm not going to allow that to happen in this case. We need to have a frank conversation. And as far as budgeting goes, you only have to provide 10% of the additional monies. 5%, I'm sorry. Oh, wow, okay. So $1.5 million, we got to find $75,000, guys. I know we can do that. Thank you.
Can I?
No,
yes, come on.
He was addressing them. Yeah.
So I'd also, like to comment because you addressed me specifically, and I understand why. I did not get involved in politics to be a politician, but, unfortunately, the only way to get things done sometimes when you're in a minority is to do things like this. And your roads are going to get paved. Things are going to get done, but because we need to work together. And unfortunately, we are not involved in a lot of these decisions. They're just being made because they don't need our votes, okay? So when a lot of the people in public, when I first got involved in this was a major topic, recreation. And it's been neglected for years in regards to the turf field and some of these user groups. And I feel like this is an opportunity to get something done that has been talked about for so many years. And unfortunately, this is the way it went tonight. And I don't enjoy doing this. And I will never put that above and ahead of public service or anything else than roads being paved. It's going to get taken care of because we need to work together. And this is going to force us to work together. And it will get done.
Hi, Janet Nisi, 7 Country Squire Lane, obviously. 2 items. One, I just want to quickly go over the library issue. I'm hopeful that it was tabled so that you can work it out so that we stay in the library system. I'm not alone. I'm not representing the Holmdel seniors, but I know a lot of people in book clubs, and when you have to get a book, you go to all the other libraries, and often Holmdel doesn't have it. Holmdel has 1 copy, and so we're going everywhere else. And there are so many who don't even know this. We just started talking about this to people, and a lot of people are upset, so I'm glad you tabled it. I would have talked more, but after hearing Mr. Critelli and Mr. Lucarelli vote against that, the budget, I am just so disgusted. I come to a lot of these meetings before the pandemic, and I watched a few on Zoom, and I can't believe you're doing this. Yes, I heard what you said, and I don't believe you're putting the interest of the town, the important things that have to get done in the town, you're just throwing those away so you can make a point about turf fields. That's all you're doing, both of you. And Mr. Critelli, I enjoyed your time on the committee, but if you feel this way, if you're doing this just to hold everyone hostage, including the town, you're thinking you're holding the township committee. No, you're holding the town hostage, and I'm really just very disgusted with that. Thank you.
Sir.
I have one more question. I still have some time. Why couldn't you have just made an ordinance, just like the other ordinances? I don't understand all the rules that go on here, but I think you could have just tried to make an ordinance for this instead of voting down a budget. Because I happen to live on the same street as Francine, and I have almost fell many times when I've been walking through around at the time of the pandemic, we'd be walking around our neighborhood, and I almost fell into potholes several times. And my husband's been telling me to call the township because our street is so low that every time we come out of our driveway, we're going bloom. And so we desperately need help on our streets. And yes, I mean, I'm fine with the turf field at this point. It doesn't matter to me, but I don't like your tactics that you're using to try and get one. Thank you.
Go.
Bill Hennigan, 13 Floyd Drive. A lesson learned tonight.
Just make sure microphone, I'm sorry, just make sure microphone picture.
A lesson learned tonight, and we all learn lessons no matter how many times you go through this. It's a political football tonight, passed back and forth. The Township Committee as a whole fumbled the ball on the capital budget ordinance. No one is going to go home feeling good tonight. There's going to be fingers pointing, people are mad, they'll blame you, whatever. The Township Committee didn't pass a capital budget. You should have. You should have gotten to an agreement prior. Question one, it was brought up in conversation, is the total cost of the turf fields $1.5 million? Was that?
No. I've done an extensive
Let him finish.
Okay, yeah,
Please.
because I know the numbers would bounce around. So my first question was exactly what was the stumbling block on the amount of money that couldn't be agreed upon prior to tonight? Secondly, does the delay in the budget continue to keep the ISO rating high? And does anybody have an estimate on the annual cost to the citizens of the extra cost of fire insurance? We all know we're paying more. Has the township taken the time to estimate the total tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands in additional unnecessary premiums because our ISO rating is so high? Even though it's being addressed now with the new firehouse, apparently it's going to be delayed and kept higher than we would like. Because once the town knows how much more they're paying, they're going to say, guys, make it work. Make it work. If you need a town, if you need a turf field, agree upon it. We need fire safety. We need first responders. We need roads. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment on one of the items?
Yeah, you could say, yep.
Can I make a comment? It's hard to evaluate what the total cost, incremental cost based on the ISO rating, simply because it's dependent on your insurance company. That's number one. Number two, as I said, there are three factors impacting the ISO rating: the work you do, your homeowner's insurance premiums, the work you've done in your home, the claims in the area, and the ISO rating. So if you have not done any work in your home, and then starting the year 2018, if you go back and look at the increase in your premiums, you will see mine went up, as I said, by $1,000. So the key is you should not have done any work starting 2018. And you can compare what you paid in 2017 with what you're paying now, and you'll see the difference. With respect to the turf field, I made a public presentation on the actual cost of the turf field. It's $2.5 million for a turf field. It's not $75,000. I don't know where these numbers come from. So $2.5 million for a bond would mean principal and interest, and that we can evaluate. So That's number two. Number three, it's not just the cost that you're going to incur because your ISO rating stays at a 9, and will continue to stay at a 9 if we don't enact this bond ordinance. More importantly, we have to remember that we're building homes up north. There's high-density housing up north, which is by Palmer Square, Barclay Square, and a couple other places. So if in the event of a fire, we will not be adequately equipped to handle these. And remember, starting 2016, 5 homes were burnt to the ground. Now that's usually unheard of in towns. I've actually researched this as well. Usually when a house burns, it doesn't burn to the ground because the fire department comes in with adequate fire trucks and equipment and put down the fire. The fact that we had 5 homes burned to the ground tells you that it's a serious situation, and we cannot we cannot put that as a lower priority item because it's so important for this town. So lives will be saved because we'll have a better fire equipment to handle if this bond had passed. And so unfortunately, people don't realize the seriousness of this issue.
Yes, miss.
Judy Tolchin, 125 Sims Drive, Manalapan, New Jersey. I'm the director of the Monmouth County Library. Mayor, committee, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I want to thank you for the lovely library in Holmdel, which we value very much as one of the great libraries in Monmouth County Library System. As we move forward, I really look forward to an open dialogue with the township to address your concerns. The library is very much appreciated by all your residents, and your residents do use all of the libraries within the system, some for access and accommodation, many other reasons why they use the library system. But we do have a wonderful library system, and we do provide wonderful services to the township, and look forward to continuing in that direction. So we do have a new librarian who is now appointed to the position of branch manager, as our last librarian retired after so very many years serving this county. And we look forward to moving in a new direction with you and together with you. And perhaps we can have a more responsive dialogue to address your concerns. And we really look forward to working with you. We do appreciate all of you. And I want to thank all of the residents who value our library system so very much, some who have come here tonight and the many I heard from today. So I want to thank you all very much. I do appreciate your time, your efforts, and your energy. You have a wonderful town. I've been associated with your town for very many years, going back to the Library Planning and Advisory Committee, which I served on for your town. Even though I lived in Manalapan, I was happy to come here and work with all of you. And it's wonderful that you accomplished bringing such a wonderful library to your town. Your residents deserve it, and so does the rest of the county. And they also deserve the rest of the branches of the Monmouth County Library System. So once again, I thank all of you and look forward to conversation.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Judy.
evening.
Thank you, Judy. You also in public, Karen?
Karen.
You can take it off the thing, yeah.
Thank you. Karen Strickland, 26 Hayward Hills Drive. I was late to the meeting, so I didn't hear anything, but I want to say 2 things. One is I love Monmouth County Libraries. I use the Hazlitt one all the time because it's near where I live on the north side of town. So I was very happy to hear that you tabled the motion. Second, I was late to this meeting. However, I sat through the whole 3-hour Recreation Committee meeting last night. And I am not convinced that there is a need for a turf field in this town. I heard at the meeting that people were asked, do you want 2 more fields across Farms Park? And the members who represented the, who used to be Stallions and used to be Pop Warner, but now are the football clubs, said, no, we don't need 2 more fields. We need lights. They want to be able to be on the fields late at night, and they want to be able to there's lots of different people with different wants. But when I asked, what are the numbers? Like, how many games are being canceled? How many kids are not being able to play because they can't be there late at night or whatever? I didn't get satisfactory answers. So, there's all this jumping up and down. We need synthetic turf. We need synthetic turf. It seems to me that we need to get a better agreement between the Township Committee and the Board of Education, because the Board of Education has some nice facility, and they need to recognize that the Recreation Department are developmental teams, and the high school needs the developmental teams to come up. And they're the same kids. I mean, we're not that big a place. We can't just be all saying, well, it's my territory or your territory. No, we're all the same kids, and I am not convinced that synthetic turf is the answer. Thank you. Oh, the Recreation Committee did a great job last night. They all talked together the whole time. There was a lot of cooperation. There was a lot of give and take. It was quite an impressive meeting, and they came about with a very nice list of recommendations, I think. Anyway, good job, Recreation Committee.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public? Jay?
Jay, 18 Lightwood Drive. Following up on that, Ms. Weber, you mentioned a study on the impact of lighting. I would encourage you just to go to look around to any of the recently installed facilities to see the horrible impact on neighboring houses or businesses from the lighting. And I can tell you, if you want another holy war, start talking about putting turf fields and light towers on Cross Farm Park or Village School. It will just be a mess again. So, I'm sorry, Tom? Okay, great. Because many of us, we're open-minded to one at the school and in some other areas. But I'm sure maybe those people will have some issues. I just also want to say, I'm not going to, there's a window of time where it was mentioned we're trying to get a turf field, and during those 8 years or whatever, I can honestly tell you I was at most of these meetings. The focus, unfortunately, was turf fields and really not that much on fire. There were attempts here and there. Everyone knows it wasn't easy, but our rating has gone up. My insurance went up materially. It stayed up. It's a tax of thousands of dollars on residents, and they don't even know it. They don't even know it. That's real money out the door. We should commit as a committee to within 12 to 18 months getting that ISO rating back to 5 and meet with whoever we have to do that. You should commit to the citizens that you're going to do that. Finally, Mayor Bontempo, I mentioned this to you before in passing. There's been a lot more of unsettling reports of crime in town. I know a lot of this can't be prevented. It's happening at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. They've now picked up a jet ski that had a lock on the transportation equipment. What can our police force do, and what can we do as a committee to start getting a grip on this? I think you need to be more blunt with citizens. I've caught myself once or twice running in the house with the fob in the car. Not as much as some others in town, apparently, but it can happen. I'm not even comfortable running in my garage, running into the house, and leaving the keys on the kitchen counter, because if I remember correctly, there was someone who ran in to grab the keys. Yeah. So this is now seriously unsettling our residents. And I think we as a committee, you as a committee, need to step up and start telling residents more bluntly, some tough love, you need to do this. And I don't know if you could work with the police in any way to augment their patrols, but I realize that's almost impossible. They can't be everywhere all night long.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing it up. I could share a little that there is a joint task force going on with some of the Bayshore area towns looking to help resolve some of these issues. But the problem is the low-hanging fruit in this town are people that leave the cars unlocked with the key fobs inside. And we're going to continue to be the target until the actors, the bad actors that are coming down to Holmdel, realize that there aren't any key fobs in cars. And yeah, and you know, that's every time I talk to the police, that seems to be the prevailing comment that I get, that people continue to leave key fobs in the cars with the doors open, and then it's easy. They know how to find these cars, and they're picking high-end cars.
Yeah.
And we did a campaign, we did the signage, on the digital signage around town, we did it in front of Town Hall. We'll continue to do it. I'm open for suggestions. If anybody from the public has any other ideas in helping communicate the message out, I'm open to it.
Have you done a blast have you done a blast voicemail? Maybe a blunt one on this.
I don't think we've done specifically on this. It could have been threaded in, and we try not to. We really do. Now the pandemic's over, but we'll talk about it. We'll try to figure out a way. I'll talk to the police and see what their thoughts are. But it's Holmdel's been an issue. Some of the surrounding towns have been an issue. You have to understand also that, high-speed chases ensue, right? And then once a high-speed chase occurs, and the police have to cut off because they can't risk anybody's life, so they have to let these guys go. And the common theme, and I'm not scientific, but seems to be the cars wind up in Newark every time, right? Found their car in Newark. We had one call where the guy didn't even know his car was gone. It was literally, we got a call from the Newark PD saying, you got a Holmdel car tearing up the streets of Newark. It was a high-performance, very high-end car, tearing up the streets of Newark. And they were complaining to us. So we go into this guy's house. He had no idea the car was gone.
Yeah. And am I correct, this jet ski lifting, is that new territory?
I don't know anything about that.
That just happened.
Yeah.
It was locked on. Yeah.
So we've also, Mayor, used social media extensively. And I know the township administrator and her team have done some work on that. We can step that up some more to remind residents. But it really is individual vigilance and, until the message gets across that there are no free cars for the taking in Holmdel. So that has a lot to do with it. I commend our police department because they have been able to track some of these down, and they're often organized groups, and put an end to it, but they're going to continue to spring up. It's supply and demand, right? But if we choke off the supply, then it will cease and desist. So, I think we should continue to explore every way to get that message across in every means of communication. But thank you for raising it.
Yeah. Final thing, this property across from the school, I thought even some of the huge proponents of a turf field and towers there realized after some analysis that there's not that much land to work with. Is that not the case? Is there enough? Mr. Cotella, you may know better.
Just finish your comment.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just repeat that.
The land near the high school, where I thought even some of the biggest proponents who looked at that, at once it was analyzed with the stream and everything,
Okay,
said there wasn't enough to work with.
There actually is a sketch where a field, a multi-purpose field will work there with limited amount of parking, about 50 parking spaces.
Okay.
So it does work there with the setbacks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make one comment with Mr. Anello. I totally agree with what you were saying, and I just wanted to say, I do see often on our social media and in a lot of areas in the town where we do make comments or remind residents to take their key fobs in, and I see it often, so I think we're doing a good job with that, but I do think we need to continue as much as we can, but I often see it in newsletters and all kinds of things, reminding residents, but I don't know if people just don't take it seriously enough or pay attention to it, and I think on top of it, these people are getting much more vigilant and much more aggressive because they know that all they need to do is speed away and get on the parkway, and it's over, right? They have to break off, and yeah. So.
Mayor, if I may just add to that, the speaker spoke of crime in Holmdel. Crime in Holmdel, aside from these car thefts, I just want to commend our police department. They do an amazing job. These car thefts, it's this area of Monmouth County, and I want to beat the dead horse here. Virtually every single one of these, there's a key fob, an unlocked car, and items out. And that is just, it's bait for these they're rings, and it's a well-oiled machine. And so what I would implore everyone watching, everyone in this room, we do it on our social media, we put it in our newsletters, we put it out there. Please do it to your networks. There might be people in your networks who don't look at the township's Facebook page or don't know what Twitter is or never open our newsletter. Please spread the word. Do not leave your key in the car. They can tell. And most of these cars these days have a signal that the key fob's in the car. It's crazy. So do not leave your key in the car. Do not leave items out, and lock your car, lock your homes.
Anybody else that hasn't spoken tonight? You haven't spoken?
She has.
Okay, you did, okay. Because you only get once.
One in the
One in the back? Yeah. Come on. I think you're the only one left. Virtually.
Bill Kastening for Takalusa. I want to kind of end on a light note. You've been talking about monarch butterflies, great thing. We got to do things there. I'd just like to point out that 15 acres opposite the high school is full of milkweed, which is what butterflies like.
Okay.
Oh, no. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good one. All right.
Anybody else? A closed public comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for coming out.